Welcome to this new idea, episode 00.03. I'm here with my guest, Katie Chin, a Bay Area artist and a thinker who's helping think through some new ideas with me this morning. This is our first morning broadcast, so I think we're going to bounce between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Mondays and Thursdays. But I was, again, the impetus for this was finding a new way to access a creative process and to be able to share that. And so I've been digging through this active creation book by Arthur Koestler, and I found another really good quote that I thought I might read before we get started today. This is after a section about the breadth of ideas that artists create. The measure of an artist's originality, put into simplest terms, is the extent to which his selective emphasis deviates from the conventional norm and establishes new standards of relevance. All great innovations which inaugurate a new era, movement, or school consist in such sudden shifts of attention and displacements of emphasis onto some previously neglected aspect of experience, some blacked out range of the existential spectrum. The divisive turning points in the history of every art form are discoveries which show the characteristic features already discussed. They uncover what has always been there. They are revolutionary, that is, destructive and constructive. They compel us to revalue our values and impose a new set of rules on the eternal game. So Katie, what are you working on? What'd you say?
So I like your quote. I think that's it's true that there's just so much that can come out of uncertain times that can be beautiful in the end. So I don't know what this will all mean for us yet, but I'm feeling somewhat hopeful that change is more possible now, which as an artist who often thinks about what's happening in society right now and just in general, like change is my friend, change is good, and I'm really excited that there's might be more opportunity for change to exist. So that's a very fitting way to open this conversation today.
Do you see your work as sociological in nature? Like, do you see that in your practice?
So I've definitely, it's funny. So I used to be an activist at one point in my life, and for me, like, my life and activism and art, like, all these things sort of circle each other, and I have to make art that has some purpose of that and has some aspect of activism in it, I hope. So that's I mean, definitely, like, socially engaged art. Some of my most successful pieces are participatory in nature, which isn't totally possible in this way that we're living right now, and maybe it could be.
What are you thinking? Like, what with that, the fact that those are impossible, like, what can you do?
It's I feel like right now, like, a lot of things are sort of like they're in, like, incubation mode, like,
right.
Everyone's kind of like come onto their shells and they're sort of like hiding away and trying to find creativity somewhere. And so I don't really know. I feel like I'm actually really excited for this conversation because we can be more vulnerable with each other and, like, get into, like, some dirty, fuzzy areas. Like,
right.
Like, it's such a gift to be able to explore that. So, I don't know if I have good answers yet, but I do know that, like, in moments like I have found myself sort of, like, trying to find this creative moments wherever I can, and in the studio, like, I'm not really making things with a lot of intention right now. I'm more just like, make sure you make something,
right?
Like, keep that juice going. And cooking has been a huge thing, like, just getting really creative. Yeah. A lot of people are doing that. Everyone's like, there's no flour in the store anymore. There's,
right.
Thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's been a lot of things I've been thinking about in general, even before this, around systems and class and structures.
Mm-hmm.
So this just is like adding more momentum to some of those thoughts, and trying to figure out what do I do with that. It's still not super clear to me, but I'm excited that the world is thinking about systems and class a lot more these days with everything that we're going through.
Right. It's so hard to ignore. And I think that the media can't ignore it right now. I mean, I think there's a real, I find myself watching the news a lot more than I used to, like by far, and listening to the news, and like instead of listening to podcasts, I'm like listening to KQED and like MSNBC and like just trying to kind of hear what's happening because of the complete lack of certainty. There's and I think that that's an exciting place to be in as an artist and as a thinker. Just taking bold steps without really knowing what the consequences might be yet. And I think capturing that, like what you said about how now is a time to just be executing and letting things simmer in preparation for things to happen, I think is a really smart thought about how to play this.
Yeah, and I think about like I know I just mentioned cooking, but like some of the most creative recipes and things that have come out of like humans' kitchens and time, they come from like scarcity and not having all the
Right.
ingredients you need or whatever. And I'm finding myself in my studio too. It's like I'm having to become more creative with materials I have, and not there's a few stores I would normally go to restock with things, and I don't have them, and it's and even just thinking about and I don't know what this will be. Like, it's probably going to be nothing, but I was making paintings this past week just using like scraps of duct tape that I had from other paintings, just because I was sort of in this mode of like trying to repurpose and reuse as much as I could.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of was inspired by like, I'm in my kitchen, I'm running out of ingredients, what do I do? And so I think all these things are going to start bleeding into the way that we work and the way that we create. And I'm also really excited I don't know, I mean, we're going to have to rethink so many things. And like, as you know, I just got accepted to MFA program, so I'm trying to think through, like, even going to school right now, like, that is a big, that's something that it's a lot to wrap my head around. You know, what that means right now in an era like this, and thinking about institutions in general, just how they're going to have to change, and how do we adjust to fit this like new reality.
Yeah, cities are going to be weird for a long time.
Yeah.
And I thought about you very early on because you go to the new school, right?
Yeah, so I'm planning to go to the new school, but it's the different schools, and and there's still some that I've gotten into that I haven't said I'm not attending quite yet, but it's
Right.
everybody sort of like put a huge pause and everything.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be due like 2 weeks ago, and everyone's like, no, they're not going to be due till the end of the summer. They haven't really made commitments to what learning will look like in the fall yet.
Right.
And New York City, it's being hit like the hardest right now in the States. So just listening to podcasts that are coming out of there, like the reality in New York City, it seems like it's surreal, like just how impacted they are. So yeah, it's an interesting time, and you're hearing stories of lots of students going on strike right now because they're expected to still pay these crazy tuition fees, and then they're not getting access to the physical places and equipment that that they're paying for, and an art degree virtually is kind of a weird. It doesn't quite work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the cracks have been showing for quite some time, and now it looks like it's gonna just all rupture. Yeah, I have a lot of friends. I'm sure you do too. That are teachers, and they're, especially adjunct, are big question marks. Even full time faculty, there's big question marks. But I mean, a lot of my adjunct friends that have had previously been able to line up 3 or 4 classes, right now are panicking because nobody's committing at all.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to say we're moving forward or not. But I mean, so that means that there's just going to be a structural change. Teaching will become more like this, maybe, or I mean the I don't know if you got a chance to see the Saturday Night Live relaunch via a recorded episode, all done while the cast members were at home. I mean it's pretty amazing what people are kind of coming up with. I mean, I think there's a when you continue to take away tools that people rely upon, that innovation starts to creep up. And I feel like, circling back to your participatory work, I mean, there's a lot of open space for participatory work, but it's going to have to involve computers or snail mail. And they say that this thing lasts on paper for 5 days, so you could just send letters to people that says don't open for 5 days. I mean, I think there's ways, dealing with open space. There was this great picture of Mitch McConnell this morning in the Senate, in the halls of the Senate, being recorded by like 5 or 6 reporters, all standing like 12 feet away from him, holding their phones out towards him, and it's this wide shot, and it's so bizarre. I mean, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for that kind of fun.
I hope so, and I was just thinking about like the purpose of these physical spaces to me, and why going to a museum or going to a gallery is like, so why is that so special? And just that it seems like that space is a place to kind of meditate and slow down and be more present with a piece of work, and really immerse yourself in a feeling, and that's something that I feel like I'm desperately missing right now.
Yeah.
We're in our houses and we're watching like Netflix and YouTube and all these things that are just like the attention speed of these kinds of media it's like a different rhythm.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful more art can penetrate our like attention bubbles in this time, so that we can find those moments of reflection and space to let ideas simmer. Because if we don't have that, it's nerve-wracking of what will happen to culture.
Right. I mean, are you? I forget. What's your living situation? Are you guys in a house or an apartment?
I'm in an apartment, so me and my partner it's a small 1-bedroom. Making it work, but I have an art studio, and that's separate from the house. And I have been going there. It's, I guess, probably debatable whether I should or not, but I rarely run into anybody over there. Like
right.
There's 3 of us in that studio, and I've run into Dion Lee is one of them. She's another person in your orbit, and we've maybe run into each other like 4 times in a year. So yeah. I don't think that it's. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Should I go? Should I not go?
Yeah, right. Well, I think you gotta be safe. I mean, I've been helping people with projects, and going and dropping things off, and you have that conversation like while each of you are standing on either side of your car, over the car, because it's the perfect measure of 6 feet. It's like people are just trying to find that space out in the world. And it's you're blowing through hand sanitizer and stuff. But I mean, I think that there's, as long as there's this much uncertainty in the situation, this is going to continue to be like this. But I think again that puts you in a position where your mind is already shifted, right? So it's like we used to always talk about, like, my obsession with a white box space, like a white wall gallery space, is that it forces you to change your perspective.
Yeah.
And it's not normal, and it makes all these exclamations when you enter the space, like, oh, these walls are set aside for art. I'm now setting myself aside to participate in art. And I feel like by you going, the act of you going to your studio, which it's debatable on whether or not it's work or whether or not it's banned right now in the Bay Area. But I mean, I think, like, you going under those circumstances and you taking every precaution and you being very careful and you're doing it in a very solitary way, puts your mind in a different place. Your art, like, just the manner of you making work is super exciting because you can't be you. You're this other version. You've changed the context so much that the work that's going to come out is going to be inevitably infected.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder how. I mean, something about, like, forcing the audience. And sorry, you broke up there a little bit, but to piggyback off of what you were saying with having that white or that box gallery, it's like, can we create? My question is, like, can we create those, like, forced, like, moments in making the audience, like, to pause? Is that even possible with art?
Yeah.
Like, I hope that it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, like one of my neighbors. So I'm now out here in suburbia, and I see all my neighbors all the time because everybody's outside all the time. Like I mean, in the last month, I've only been here 9 months or something, and in the last month I've learned mostly everybody's name. I found out who has kids because I never saw kids, but there's a bunch of my neighbors that have kids, and now they just ride bicycles up and down the street all day long. And one of my neighbors is an artist, and they've fenced off their yard with a really simple mesh fence, and covered it with signs that are really positive, and they've moved a portion of their living room out into their front yard. Like, they've moved a bunch of chairs and tables, and they bought a fire pit, and they're now out there. If it's nice out, they're out there hanging out, reading. And I think probably just because they were going nuts in their house, but also, like, now you can just have this conversation with this fence with these neighbors that weren't really accessible before. I don't think I ever spoke to them prior to 3 weeks ago. So it's like,
there was this call, not like maybe 6 months ago in Oakland, for, like, people to make art in front of their buildings. I don't know, I just kind of thought of that. Like, why not have an elevated art experience that is throughout, like, more, it doesn't have to be in a gallery, like, right, in open spaces.
Yeah, you open a garage and you just can't enter it. You can come up to it and look inside.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a diorama aspect of that exists in a lot of galleries anyway, where you can't enter the installation. I mean, I think if you could find a way to open that to the outside, I feel like if Agri was still at its old building, that would have been something that we would have went for. Just, like, opened the roll-up door and had the exhibition be something that you could just walk up to.
Without going in. More like walking. I've noticed, like, I need to do something every day, so I'm taking more walks. And walking around my neighborhood is something that I just never really did before. Like, I didn't have a reason to, and it's nice to just notice so many more. I mean, it's like small things, like the cool teal house on the corner or something. But the attention around my immediate vicinity as sharpened.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's kind of a nice idea, like having art more in around and stumble upon it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's going to change. I mean, this is all going to just change attitudes of what the value of art is. I mean, I think there's going to be. I mean, no matter how bad the economy is proposed to be, people aren't going to go back to work as easily as everyone wishes they could. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have been privileged enough to get a taste for time right now. That, people that have been really killing themselves for many, many years have been either furloughed or, with some pay, or have been, forced to figure out a different way for the time being, and are looking at that as like, Jesus, I really needed this. I mean, I think and that's a unique perspective, I think, coming from a lot of working artists that have been really making their 40-hour 50-hour work weeks happen and doing art practice 20 hours 30 hours a week now
Yeah.
are like, well, Jesus, maybe there's another way to move forward after this, and I don't know. I mean, it's
exposing a lot of the cracks, as you called it earlier. And I'm just listening to a lot of podcasts about so many museums aren't going to be able to make it out of this financially. They're in trouble, and how much exploitation of cheap labor there is in the art world. A lot of that, it's going to be even more challenging. It is like exposing this system that we all live in a bit with more clarity, and it's and most people. I mean, it's like the fish in the water. Like when the fish doesn't see the water, like a lot of their lives, we don't really notice the system that's happening around us, and it's being exposed really clearly for a lot of people for the first time, and that is exciting to me. I think if more people can understand how those function.
yeah. So what are you working on? Like, what thoughts are making it into your practice at the moment?
So some of the thoughts have, for a period, a lot of my work was dealing with gender dynamics and gendered behaviors, and questioning some of the power dynamics that come with the gendered experiences that we all have. And I'm almost like just thinking about how that's gone. It's like it's almost too easy. Like there's a bigger narrative that I need to talk about and thinking about systems. But I want to start shifting my focus that way, and I don't know exactly how quite yet, because identity art it's like people like the self-reflection of that. It's almost more selfish, or like it's easier. There's like this drama, or it's more relatable. People can kind of like attach themselves to a human story and a human narrative that comes with identity-based art practices, and to move beyond that to thinking more about systems. Like, how do you do that? Like, I'm struggling to think through, like, how do you do that in a way that still can capture sort of the emotional tension of an audience in a way that isn't, I love like the Gorilla Girls and like Hans Hack, but like some of these artists, like it's almost like it's like a protest sign instead of like an experience. And how is there a way to create art that speaks to systems and change and has an activist mindset, but at the same time is the experience for the audience that taps into that more like subconscious layer, and that's like the two things that's sort of circling around in my brain, and I don't know how they're going to connect quite yet, but I'd like to figure out a way to do that. And I think the moment is right. Is becoming more prime for that. I mean, me too. Like this big wave of awareness with the what's happening and what's women have gone through, and this exposing all the cracks in our system right now. It's almost like maybe us two or like you two. Like I don't know. Like there's something that all of us kind of have dealt with this these systems in a different way, and it's not based on just like an identity of being a woman or being a Chinese person or being whoever. Like there's something bigger that is at play.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right that there's a people are going to want to try something different than the patriarchy. I think a lot more people right now, looking at these people that are currently in charge of what's happening and how badly they're doing. I think that there's going to be a lot more people out there that are maybe opening their mind to like, maybe I should be electing somebody that's not a 60-year-old white dude to office, and I'm hoping that, that there'll be some more of that. And that'll filter through society. I mean, I think that there'll be a lot of people that are like, why are we trusting this person? Why are these the only teachers we have? Why are these the only police officers we have? Why are these the only,
I hope so.
So I love the idea of you kind of just thinking through that and being more thoughtful about how to combine that with your ideas.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought of this, but you always like come back to Star Trek, right?
Yeah, I do a lot. Yeah.
And that's like, how do we? I mean, it's kind of like let's envision a new world, new way of being. And I'd like to like weave that into my art practice more and more somehow. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer yet, but those are the things that like I want to start exploring more, and I'm feeling forced to. I guess it's even more so in these moments.
Yeah, I mean that was the lore of Star Trek is that somewhere in the middle of this current century, things completely fell apart, and that it took that to happen, followed by a singular scientific innovation that united the world. That's how it happened. I mean, I think that that's pretty accurate as to how major societal changes happen. I mean, things have to be really destroyed before they can be rebuilt thoughtfully. And I think it's got to take a lot of smart people and fearless people to make those leaps. And right now, those people aren't in charge. Certainly not in this country.
And I hope that I mean, this is I guess where I would get more pessimistic. Is like, is this enough? It might not be. Like I don't know. Like I don't think people are really. The wave of change hasn't really happened yet.
Yeah.
I mean, even like, I don't know, like Joe Biden or Trump, like.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like there's not much. I mean, there's some differences, but not huge.
I don't know how we ended up in a situation where the only choices were old men. And it just seems so crazy to me, like.
Yeah. Old men and they're creepy too. Like,
creepy.
I think there's been like I don't know some simmering news that hasn't gotten total visibility yet of just like Biden being creepy with some of his staff members.
Yeah, right. And is it going to keep people away from voting? I mean, I don't know. We'll hopefully he picks somebody absolutely brilliant to be his VP, and hopefully he realizes that he's not going to do that great and bails before it happens or something. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of crazy things that could happen. But I think I think we keep circling around this idea of this time being almost right for something, right? Like it's in the air, and but nobody can talk, like nobody can have group conversations right now effectively. I think a lot of people are going through screen fatigue, where they're just tired of these meetings. I mean, are you still working?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, luckily my job can be very digital, so
Yeah.
it's actually, it's like almost hard to not work more on accident,
Mm.
because there's nowhere else to go.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's like, it is a bit of like screen, it's like a screen marathon. Like, how do you, it's challenging to get to that deeper layer, um, when you're just in this mode. I've tried to do, I mean, a lot of people are doing like virtual happy hours and things like that,
Yeah.
or even conversations with friends. Like, you, the spaces that we used to be in, you even think about like a party or something, like it's much easier to have like a deep philosophical art conversation with someone if people are kind of mingling and, finding little corners to talk with each other. And if you have like a Zoom happy hour or something with like 8 screens,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of in this mode where that's not as natural. You have to kind of speak one by one. It almost feels like a corporate meeting.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, like the casual, where a lot of ideas, I think for me, like when you're collaborating with other people, like it needs to, the organic nature, we're losing that. And we almost have to like forcefully create that. And maybe this is what, more intentional meetings like this,
Mm-hmm.
like that could maybe happen. So I'm really glad that you're kind of, pushing that forward, because we need that organic ideation to still be in our lives. And artists, like, and there's a reason why we all flock to cities. Like, we want to be around each other and have those organic conversations with each other.
It's funny that I get, I don't know if you know this about me. Willis does. A lot of, and several people do that. Like I have a lot of trouble in big crowds, like in bars. It's difficult for me to maintain focus when I'm in high sound environments. Like I just can't narrow. Like I'll end up like being face to face with somebody and listening to somebody like over my shoulder to the right. Like I just can't do it. And I find that I get a lot of work done when I'm by myself in places like that. So when I'm actually not, when my goal isn't to communicate, but I'm in a loud environment, like a bar during football season, or I mean, just a sports bar in general usually does it because I can just go there and there's so much overload that it actually gives me a little bit more focus than silence does. Which
I
is,
understand that.
yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing, and I feel like I'm dying without that right now. Like I just want to be in a crowd, and that's not going to happen for a little while. But Willis and I are trying to listen to a lot of music, and we're trying to participate in many different types of reading. Like we're keeping our eye out for each other and to like make sure that like let's not listen to that music for this much longer, let's change it, or let's not watch that show anymore, let's change it, like let's try to go for a different walk today, like really trying to not fall into what would that be, like a lull of doing what's easy right now because everything is so much easier, right? I don't know, it's a complicated thought. And it kind of goes back to your cooking thing, where it's like when you're pinched, you gotta ignite that success in another way. Like when you're without ingredients, how do you find your way forward? And I feel like we're trying to help each other.
And a lot of this makes, I mean, as humans, like we need to keep that. Like, we're sponges, like
Yeah.
we're and artists especially. Like we need. Um, I mean, I don't know how all artists function, but for me at least, like a big part of it, it's like I'm just soaking up everything around me and just like sort of sensing and intuiting, the world, and then it simmers in me and kind of like gets all chopped up in my brain, and I spit it back out, and it makes more sense. And that cycle of like being a sponge, and like if the sponge doesn't get water, it's just gonna like crackle up into
Right.
out. Like I hear you on that. Like there is this like. Um, and I don't want to fill it with garbage. Like I don't want to just like, and I'm already seeing myself like watching more YouTube than I ever did. Like I need to really try to intentionally avoid that.
Yeah, but garbage, you need a little bit of garbage. I mean, just there's a. I wouldn't beat yourself up over that. I mean, I think that there's.
Garbage is okay, but
There's a time, it's like there's that, like as you said with sponge, I think you're like this too, in that you like to collect a lot of information
yeah,
before you start down a path of making a proclamation. You want to get a lot more, and I feel like when I'm forcing myself to be creative, which over the last few years has been a lot more difficult than it was 10 years ago, I have to really do a lot of. I have to have, like, if I try to write an essay, I mean, I've been talking about, like, if you read anything that I've written,
yeah,
Willis and I talked about it for whatever 5-10 hours. I read 1,000 things about it. Like I can't just write 1,000 words without spending 40 hours preparing anymore. Unless it's something that comes really easily. If I'm really trying to say something creative that has an arc to it, it takes a lot of time for me anymore. And I feel like I'm not doing any of that right now because I haven't set aside that time yet. Like I think I'm trying to take this time to really restructure all the other things in my life that have been getting weaker these last 12 months, and really trying to kind of firm up organization and being ready for things in the future. It seems like to me it's a bit of a gift, but not a creative one. So this feels like
I feel like it's a little differently about. I mean, having moments like right now, it's like as long as we're doing something, like keeping that muscle going. Like there's, I don't know. I'm painting more, and I'm not really a painter. I don't. Not like the kind of art that I want to do isn't going to be paintings in the way that I'm painting. But as long as I'm doing something, like it's I don't know. It feels okay. Like it's. I'm not trying to beat myself up about it right now. It's like revert back to whatever. Not that artist journey is like totally like childhood, but I started as a painter, so I'm like kind of reverting back to these like my artist childhood way of being. So it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's easy to it's easy to get into that. I don't need to make it hard on myself right now. So as long that's what I keep telling myself.
Yeah, now's not the time for that.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing is that I don't just shrivel up into a dried up sponge.
The dried up sponge. Yeah, I think this is the first episode that I haven't titled, and before we started, and so I've been like in the back of my mind trying to figure out what a good title might be when we get to it. Dried up sponge is in the running, because I feel like that's. I mean, a lot of people are in that space. Similar to you. I mean, I've been having weird half-hour conversations with friends on randomly, and the conversations are so boring, but
Yeah.
they're like by any other, I mean, yeah, right. By any other measure, they're the most boring conversations in the world, and neither of us can hang up. Like it is just so nice to talk to somebody else, and
Yeah.
I feel like that. Yeah, it's a really strange effect. I mean, like somebody's gonna name it. Like I think that there's a million things that are happening right now that people are gonna just find ways of categorizing, exploiting, and using this as a psychological experiment, and getting new information about all the ways with which our society was not misstructured but structured, was kind of maybe the I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, I wonder what the effects are to people that do live a solitary life. Are they even noticing this? I mean, I think us living more urban lives. I wonder if rural folks with good internet access, are they even feeling like anything's different? You know.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, well, so I grew up in Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
and while we grew up in Columbus, which is the city, my parents later moved to rural Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
and some of their neighbors around there, they're it seems like they're still fearful and
Okay.
anxious, and a lot of some of them are, one's a dairy farmer, and like the economy has just changed for so many people.
Yeah.
And like farmers right now, like it's really, like they can't pick. I guess another system of like an economic system that we are more aware of. I hope, just the supply chain of food, and
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of and I think about these topics. I don't know, going back to what do I do as an artist to deal with these? Like, I want to make installation work, like, I don't know, sculptures of people, like laborers or something, or like food, and like there's just so many like I'm going towards like this old, like I want to do work that is installation and
Right.
has this, it should be in this box, but I can't. What do I do with that now? Like, do I just make it?
Huh.
And maybe that's why people are getting really stuck, because they can't like envision where this would possibly go. It's like too uncertain.
Right.
I don't know. That was kind of a circle train of thought, but
No, I mean that's what we're doing. We're just trading those. That's the whole point of this, is just leaving the web open and not need to be, you don't need to complete it. You don't need to complete any of these thoughts. It's a new idea. This isn't the idea.
yeah, I like that. I like it. It's nice to be vulnerable that way too.
What is it about? It makes total sense that it would be more comforting to be painting and doing paintings and sculpture.
Yeah.
But what do you feel like you kind of gradually found yourself there, or was that a decision where you're like, I think I got to do something a little bit more safe?
I think this is something, I think, for me that's happened even before this moment. But if I ever get stuck, it's like there's less pressure when it comes to painting for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to make something to show.
Right.
It's like my journal.
Uh-huh.
I trust myself enough in that medium to like not be mad at myself if it turns out like shit. Like, it's just
Yeah.
Because I will hide those away and they'll never see the light of day. But it's fine. It's more just like a doodle sketch pad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone who just draws a lot.
Right.
It's the way I notebook. But it at least gets like I'm able to access that part of my brain.
Uh-huh. Right. It kickstarts the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kickstarting the process. That's another one.
Uh, and it's all. I mean, even like making a lot of art is just problem solving a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think I found the things that I've been working on. My safe space is not poorly made, but efficiently made organizational structures, and that's what I want to physically make when I am in a situation like this. And so it's like I'm gonna make a shelf that is very specific for this one thing, or I'm gonna make a rack that is for these 5 things, and I'm gonna figure out how to do it with stuff that I already have. And if it doesn't look that great, it doesn't matter. It's just for this purpose. It doesn't need to look good. It needs to solve this problem. So that's what I find myself digging into during times like this. Isn't that funny? And so it's like I've been really just making these weird little improvements. Like I think we're gonna try to make I'm gonna try to make a rolling island that's at cutting height for me. So like a cart that can be in our kitchen, in our dining room, but that's 41.5 inches. Like something that is the height for me to cut something. And it'll be too high for Willis, but she could like serve drinks on it. You know what I mean? Like it'll be right for me to cut. But
that's
it's like
that problem solving creative mode. Like you just gotta keep that going.
Yeah.
It'll turn into bigger problems when we're ready. I hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for having this conversation. What do you have going on for the rest of the day? Are you going to try to enjoy the sunshine that seems to be a little bit new?
Yeah. Go on a bike ride. Yeah. Today's a holiday for me, so.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I gotta brave the grocery store again at some point in the next few days. So.
Yeah.
But. Yeah. Thanks for creating this space, and I look forward to seeing what new ideas come out of this, and I hope that I would love to listen to more artists just like be vulnerable in this space and come up with threads of ideas, and who knows, maybe something will weave together at some point. But
yeah,
it is exciting.
I think. You. Yeah, well, thank you. I hope that I'm off to a good start with how haphazard these first 3 have been, and this is the first one where I feel like we weren't talking about the show as much as talking about where we are. So that's a big step for me. I feel like it's starting to find form, and the arc with which I hope that they move forward in the hour, less than an hour or whatever. And I know I'm gonna try to keep them all under an hour. Try to keep them all moving quick. And I don't know. Thank you for being part of this experiment.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
You too. Bye, Conrad.
Bye. So, thank you for joining me for this episode 3 of This New Idea. I will be continuing this chatcast throughout the foreseeable future, and hopefully you'll see me again on Thursday at 5 p.m. Feel free to go back and check out the archive of Layla Weafer and Joshua Pieper visiting, and I'll see you next time on This New Idea.